my head is all like gucha guchaって感じ. Like I'm thinking in English mostly, but 日本語も入ってるね、絶対. It's 結構不思議. Maybe you've lived abroad before, maybe multiple places. I've been living abroad in Japan for a while, and over the years, I've begun to feel that I don't really fit in anywhere. Maybe some of you can relate. A little background on me, I am fourth generation Japanese American, and so I didn't grow up with the Japanese language, and the culture was a little bit removed because my parents and grandparents were both born and raised in the US. Anyone who's lived in multiple places or grew up in a multicultural home might be able to relate to this, but there is no one culture that I fully identify or relate to anymore. And the longer that I've been in Japan, the more and more that I'm realizing this. I mean, it's cool, it makes me unique. I can see things with a different perspective from other people, and I can make my own rules as to how I want to live my life, et cetera, et cetera. But it does get confusing and a little bit lonely at times. I guess that's why you see a lot of foreigners hanging out with other foreigners, at least here in Japan. A lot of mixed culture people hanging around with other mixed culture people because they share that in-betweenness or that foreignness in common. For me, my day-to-day, because I work at a Japanese agency, is pretty Japanese. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Where do I fit in? What do I identify with and what do I don't identify with? If this being in the middle between the US and Hawaii and Japan is interesting to you, I hope you consider subscribing because that's me. So in an attempt to do some self-analysis and share it with you, I've looked at specific things within 3 different scientific categories. I divided them into daily stuff, fun stuff, and grown-up stuff. Now, before I get into it, I just want to stress that this is based on my personal experiences and perceptions, and they might include generalizations and things that might not be accurate for some other people, so just beware. Daily things. So there's a lot of riding public transportation here in Japan, and with this, I am definitely on the Japanese side. I mean, just behave. Stop talking loudly on your phone, turn off your speakers, put your feet down off the seat, and watch where your hair goes. If you have long hair, it's just common courtesy to other people that are taking the transportation with you. I don't understand why some people, especially overseas, can't do this. It's the lack of sense and awareness is almost like a child even, I think. But how we are generally in public spaces, I think I'm also just more Japanese. I like that people are more mindful of others and they treat the common space as what it is, a common space shared with a lot of other people. Whereas in the US, it's more like, this is not my personal space and someone is getting paid to take care of it. So I can more or less do and treat it however I want. And I don't really like that. So definitely more Japanese on that side. But sometimes in Japan, people are overly follow, like to the point where they don't know how to think for themselves. Like you ever see some people waiting on a small street because the light is red, but there's like literally no cars anywhere and they'll just like wait. Or I've been to a baggage claim in the airport and there's a line that says no carts beyond this point, but Japanese will see the line and just automatically think that they're not allowed to step over it. I think it's okay. When it comes to eating out, it depends. I can do a Western style table. I can sit on the ground. I'm fine either way. It doesn't really matter to me. But in Japan, I'm still a little bit uncomfortable with shouting out at the waiters to get their attention. Like, sumimasen! I think I'm being a little bit rude. It's just, I'm a little uncomfortable with that still, even when it's a small sushi, fast food sushi joints, and you have to shout out what sushi you want to the chef. Little uncomfortable doing that still. But man, when it comes to tipping, Japan all the way. I mean, more professional service and no tip, of course, it's a no-brainer. Now, I get why you have to tip in the US. I've worked in a restaurant before, but I just think that whole setup is a little messed up. But people in Japan generally give better service at restaurants, albeit a little bit less personable, but more professional service. And they get no tip, and they're probably making less than $10 US per hour on average. And it's just that I like people who actually try hard at what they're doing to do the best that they can rather than just participating in activities so that they can get paid for it. Okay, fun stuff. I think this is the category where I'm really American. I like sports. I like sports like American football and basketball, and both of them are pretty minor sports in Japan, I would say. Sports culture in general is a lot more of a major pillar in society in the US than it is in Japan. In the US, you have multiple channels, multiple live sports. You have debates and detailed analysis. In Japan, it's just a lot more fluff. There's definitely no Stephen A's.
You must be. I don't even know what to say to you right now.
Now, for the Olympics, I'm finding myself more and more in the middle about which country to cheer for. It really depends on the sport and depends on the athlete. I'm pretty 50-50 on it at this point. But in general, the sports culture is a lot less here in Japan, and there's not many people that I can really dive into talking about sports with. Movies as well, I think I'm still heavily American. Almost everything I watch is American or Western, aside from, spot movies here and there from other countries or from Japan. I don't watch any anime, but I did watch Your Name, which is super good. And I don't read manga either. Music, I went through phases of listening to Japanese music, but overall, they're very much American or Western music. I think only one guy I know who's Japanese actually listens to Kendrick Lamar. And it's fine, to each their own, right? But what this affects is karaoke. And karaoke is one of the common fun activities to do in Japan. People go to sing and drink and have a good time. If I'm with an all Japanese group, there is no song that I know or recognize. So I'm just sitting there drinking or clapping the tambourine. And then if I chose a song, I would be the only one that could really sing it. I can't sing, but you know what I mean. Comedy is interesting because it's something that just generally doesn't cross borders very well. And I'm still very much a fan of American comedy. But what really made me realize that there was a difference was the recent event with Chris Rock and Will Smith. I'd say that most people thought that Will Smith was in the wrong to go up on stage and slap Chris Rock. But in Japan, the reaction was completely different. Almost everyone supported Will Smith, said that he was right to do it and he was so cool to do it. Now, obviously, it's because Will Smith is more well-known. He has a positive image here and he's well-liked. But it's also because they don't really understand the context of the situation or that this can be considered comedy. Even when I tried to explain that this is just a type of American comedy that people like in the US, the reactions were like, how can that be comedy? What does that say about that society if people find saying mean things about each other funny? Or other comments were like, how can that be comedy? Because Americans are so sensitive about everything. And they make valid points, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm still American because I find that kind of comedy funny or funnier. Drinking culture, I could go either way, right? I tend to like lounges or casual sports bars, and there's a little bit less of that here in Japan. So I think I'm still American on that side. But America has really strange rules when it comes to drinking, right? Like 21 years old, but then you're an adult at 18, or you can't sip on alcohol outside, but you can sip and then get behind a wheel and drive a car. Like, what's up with that? It doesn't make any sense. Grown-up stuff. Okay, work. Like paper. American paper, what is that? What is letter size? It's so stubby and short and fat. It's like a square, like A4, guys, get with it. Business card culture, not a fan. It's so tedious. You take this card and you have to hand it over like it's some precious artwork, and then you receive it, and then you stare at the other person's card for a long time, like, oh, rereading. It's kind of cool because it's like collecting basketball cards or something, but it's super inefficient. If you want to stay in contact with someone, add them on social media, LinkedIn, get their email address or something. What am I going to do with this card? It's going to take up space. Being mindful of what language you use depending on who you're speaking to in the office. Like, I don't really do it, but people have to do it here in Japan if the person is older or younger, or if they have a higher position than you. And then when it comes to getting into a car, who goes in where, when you get into an elevator, who stands where in the elevator is just a lot to think about. And I don't really do it. So I'm definitely not Japanese in that sense. At home, like cleaning stuff and doing household chores, if there's a tool, I'm going to use it. I think a lot of people in Japan, even if they could have a dishwasher, they wouldn't use it. I'm definitely going to use a dishwasher. If there's a clogged drain, I'm going to find Drano and shove that down the pipes. I guess that's kind of American for me to think that way. Partner roles. In Japan, traditional roles are still very common, although it's probably fading a little bit just because of the economy, and there's like a huge discussion that we could have about this. In the US, it's almost bad to be traditional, I feel. And for me, I think I'm neither, and I think everyone should be neither. We shouldn't have a say on who does what or what's normal and acceptable and what's not. It depends on each individual and each couple. But I do understand the Japan side because each person in the household has a role or a set position. It's actually like a team, but it also can be suppressive, right? The woman has to fill that role and has to give up their career. And even if they wanted to get a career while having a kid, they're probably facing a lot of limitations in the workplace because of that. But it's also suppressive to men because they have the pressure to be able to provide for their family a decent life only on a single income, which is getting a lot less and less realistic these days. On the flip side, in America, you have this push to be progressive, and it almost makes it so that people who prefer to be more traditional get looked down upon because of their decision. And it shouldn't be that way at all, because this is not a perfect system either, because you end up having two quarterbacks in the household with no linemen, in a sense. So in the end, I just don't like that any society says this is the right way and this is what's acceptable and this is kind of looked down upon. It's really to each their own, and we should be supportive of whatever people decide to do. I think in general, the US is outwardly political and outwardly extreme. You know, look at the comedy situation. On one hand, you have it being okay and acceptable to make fun of someone's, illnesses or drawbacks. And then you have the situation where everyone's kind of tiptoeing and walking on eggshells because certain words are not acceptable anymore. And everyone is just overly sensitive about everything. Everything is offensive these days in America, right? Or with food, it's like high calorie, high carb, super loaded with sugar type of meals. Then you have this like full on vegan diet, or you pay extra money to have a personal trainer because this is the life you also live. And it's like this extreme approach to everything. And even the language we use, it's like, break down the walls, shatter glass ceilings, or disrupt the industry. It's super extreme and overhyped in a sense. So if we look at it like a seesaw, the US is trying to find a way forward by putting heavy weights every time on the very ends of each seesaw and trying to make it balance and work. Japan, on the other side, doesn't like to move at all and is a lot more risk averse and cautious. So they're trying to find a way forward by getting everyone in the middle and saying, nobody take a step anywhere. Let's just see what happens. I'm definitely in the middle, somewhere between the two cultures. It really depends what we're talking about. And there's a lot of things that I haven't really given any thought to yet. But if this kind of being in the middle and being lost between the US, Hawaii, Japan is interesting to you, please subscribe. If you thought this video was interesting, hit the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about my thoughts on things, and let me know what you feel about these these topics that we went over. I hope to hear from you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.